views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Fire Radio. We are going to continue our exciting month-long series or shows on the topic of balance. I'm joined with my lovely co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. Glad to be with you.
So am I. Great to be here and talking about multiple perspectives of balance. And isn't that a funny thing, right? Multiple perspectives means we're going to have to spend equal time on each one to keep them all in balance, right?
Well, not exactly. But that's actually one of the really interesting issues, I think, Steve, is are all perspectives equal, of equal weight?
Ah, perfect. Yes, indeed. And what's your sense?
Well, I think that there's an importance in understanding different perspectives, but from an ethical perspective, all perspectives are not equal. I mean, we saw this in the Charlottesville comments by President Trump. You know, the whole issue of trying to draw moral equivalence between different perspectives. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind as we're talking about balancing multiple perspectives.
Wonderful. And so I guess that word perspective really comes to the forefront then, because it is about having a true perspective, you know, about having a non-bias and actually a somewhat elevated, not elevated in terms of, we would like to think in terms of morality, but elevated in terms of view so that we can observe with a keen mind, right? And a clear mind. I like it.
Yeah, well, and this is, you know, in astrology, the astrological sign that has to do with balancing multiple perspectives is the sign of Libra. And I've given a lot of thought to this dynamic in Libra because I actually have Libra rising, so it's an important element in my own birth chart. And I think it has to do, for me anyway, it has to do with committing to trying to understand different perspectives. It's that, you know, walking in the shoes of another. Not necessarily agreeing, not necessarily believing that they're all equal, but that element of understanding so that I can anticipate the consequences of that particular perspective.
Right, without being thrown off in any way, because understanding itself sure brings balance, right? And it's interesting. Right. Understanding is also, we have a mental quality to it. And if we're going to talk about Libra, we're talking about air signs, which have a mental quality to them as well. So you can see that this balance is of a mental nature. And my birth chart, Dorothy, we're discovering more about each other as we always do each week. I've got Mercury in Libra. And so my mind is always going, sometimes it's vacillating between two things back and forth, but that always does tend to come to an equilibrium as I see clearly and as I come to understand that which is in front of me. So that's a big part of Libra as well. You know, the last two shows, right, Dorothy? I couldn't wait to talk about Libra.
So go for it, Steve.
I have a lot of Libras in my life. And I also think, and you will understand this, Because your rising sign is Libra, and oftentimes the rising sign is sort of what we're working toward. It's often the sign really of the soul. It's that striving toward a certain energetic that we sense will bring clarity in our rising sign. But I am also a Virgo, which is September, and Libra follows Virgo. And so in a sense, you always have this sort of undercurrent of that which is being examined or felt or brought into fruition through Libra will come about as a result of really going through the full and sort of culminated experience of Virgo. So you sort of sense that's what's to come. So I think we both have that. And it's quite obvious, right? It's kind of a celebration of balance in that we are always between ourselves trying to find a proper balance in our understanding each month and each week of these ideas. It's quite lovely.
And it's I think one of the challenges is, for example, if I hear somebody say, "Well, that person's just wrong," all wrong, I find I have difficulty with that because I don't think anything is all wrong, in the sense that there must be a reason why this person holds that particular position. And if I can understand that, then I can try to find a way to work towards a common good, a common understanding. So I think one of the misperceptions about when people talk about, a middle path or, between two lines of force, they draw on a basically dualistic image, that it's either A or B. And so if I don't agree that it's A, then it must be B, instead of seeing that there are multiple perspectives.
Well, and that's what I love about so many of our discussions on duality and that keynote, just for listeners, that Dorothy just mentioned a few words that are a part of esoteric astrology. And there are keynotes or phrases that energetically hold the vibration of a sign. And Libra's is, I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. And what you're saying is really right there in the sort of minutia of that sentence, because it's the way which leads between two great lines of force. It's not saying I choose exactly the middle ground or I'll meet halfway between these two opposing forces. It's that there's a way that leads between them. And you can sense in just that vibration that there's a lot in between there, right? That what I've loved about our conversations on non-duality is this area in between is so vast. And it's that these, right and wrong sets up boundaries, perhaps, of extremes in one or the other, but it's the sort of glorious midsection where all of these wonderful sort of dynamic possibilities lie. And so, finding that path is a process and a lovely one.
That's right. And I personally find it helpful to think about models that clearly have more than one dimension. One of the ones that I've worked with the most is the Myers-Briggs, where you've got the four continua of extroversion, introversion, sensation, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. And it's not, while you may find it helpful to understand your initial impulse, what if you don't think at all, how are you likely to react? Well, you can see that in the pattern of where you fall on each of these four. But really, to me, the growth opportunity is being able to draw on all 8 of those dynamics. So, for example, if we think of thinking and feeling, I don't want to always have only a mental perspective or only a feeling perspective, emotional perspective. I want to be able to draw on both of those. It makes for a much richer interaction with the world.
Yes.
Or if we take extroversion, introversion, which is, I think, one of the least best understood, it's not introversion isn't about being shy and unable to relate to people. It's about where you get your renewal from. So as an introvert, I can be very social, but my renewal comes from my own internal process, my own internal meditation, whereas an extrovert gets their renewal from interacting with other people. I'll just tell you a little story about this, Steve, maybe to illustrate this to our listeners. I was talking with my mother one day on the phone, and she was talking about how exhausted she was. She had just gone through a grueling experience, and to me, that meant, I would just want to be by myself, just be quiet, maybe listen to some music. And her next comment was, so I'm feeling much better because a friend of mine came by and invited me to a party, and it was really wonderful. And I thought, I would never renew that way, through interaction with others, or very seldom. But it's two different ways of accessing energy, and each of them can be useful at different times. So I find that Myers-Briggs typology just, much richer than a very dualistic image.
Right. So it's really about finding balance amongst all of your traits, and even perhaps in some that you wouldn't necessarily say are always at the forefront, but which traits are appropriate in a certain situation and are most appropriate for you. And it's balancing oneself. So you feel that balance and equilibrium, but it's not necessarily the result of this one dynamic.
That's right. Yeah.
I love that you said least best. Wow, least best. What could that be? You're right about extrovert. It's an interesting dynamic. I find that also with left brain, right brain. I'm left-handed, and so you're always sort of called out in a situation for a lefty and all of their traits. But it just so happens that my partner is left-handed too. And he's incredibly left-brained, and left-handed. So all of these things, we really just have to observe how they affect our lives and where our some of our defaults are and what we sort of take refuge in. But, I see we have to go to a break. How wonderful. But we're going to talk about the brain a little bit, right? We're going to talk about the mind and the brain and some balancing that happens in our skull. When we come back, Dorothy will be right back after these messages.
In this day and age, if you don't reinvent yourself, you may never find balance, peace, and the sustainable life that is your birthright. Angela Watson Robertson, known as the Reinvention Warrior and the host of breakthrough radio show Masters of Reinvention, is here to help you reinvent every area of your life. Tune in and hear from the best in the personal transformation business and discover tips and tools for positive change. Live every month on Transformation Talk Radio.
Hey, did you know why they call the foundation? It's called the foundation because it completely eliminates your foundation for what you thought your reality was and creates a whole new space where you can have an entirely new reality that is foundationless. So from my point of view, they should call it the unfoundation or the foundationlessness. Either way, there's a big new global rewrite happening again because these guys cannot stop changing. There should be like a Change Anonymous that Gary and Dane go to. And it's happening April 28th to May 1st. You can find out about it at accessconsciousness.com/global foundation. It's happening in Paris. Go to Paris or do it online or find a pod near you. These are all the options you have. And what else is possible?
Are you traveling most of your day? Do you want to take Transformation Talk Radio with you anywhere you go? Well, guess what? There's an app for that. Just go to the App Store on your Apple device or the Google Play Store on your Android and search Transformation Talk Radio. Catch all of our live shows no matter where you are. Thanks for listening.
Calling all moms, it's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms helping everyday women create extraordinary lives. Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.
Wow. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. This is Talk Radio to Thrive By. I'm telling you, I got to pinch myself some days because when each of us gets called to do something that we so not thought was in our wheelhouse to do for a purpose that's so much greater than us, we get to show up and shine.
If you would like to show up and shine on the Dr. Pat Show as a co-host or sponsor, send us an email to inspire@thedrpatshow.com.
Hello, welcome back, listeners, to Spirit Fire Radio. It's lovely to be with you and to continue this conversation on balance. And, how can balance bring some sort of understanding, greater understanding of ourselves and of our world? And that's really, I would say, Dorothy, that's really our purpose here is a greater understanding. How do we create a more sympathetic and fluid life for ourselves? In a sense, it's the spiritual path. And our radio show, Spirit Fire Radio, is intent upon examining this spiritual path and examining various influences, various ways we can create practical ways to bring spirituality more into our lives. And it leads me to talk about our organization. So Dorothy, do you want to say a bit about the School for Esoteric Studies?
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. This is a conscious collaboration between Spirit Fire and the School for Esoteric Studies. The School for Esoteric Studies provides esoteric discipleship training for persons who have a spiritual practice that they wish to deepen. And we do that through meditation, study, and service. And several years ago, we began talking as a school about the fact that it was important to collaborate with other organizations, not simply work on our own. And so we began reaching out, looking for other partners, and we were absolutely delighted when Spirit Fire said that they would love to collaborate also. And our first collaboration is this radio program. So it's a delight to be here with you, Steve. You can find out more about the School for Esoteric Studies at esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net.
Wonderful. I just love that website. So much valuable and inspiring information there to be found. And spiritfire.com is where you can find out more about Spirit Fire. We're also an educational nonprofit focused on cultivating spirituality and educating people on the importance of consciousness and awareness in everyday life. We really focus on meditation, study, and service as well, this sort of three-legged stool of expanding one's awareness and deepening their consciousness. So we do that through our own meditation practice called the Practice of Living Awareness. And again, spiritfire.com, you can find out more about that and our retreat center in Western Mass and upcoming retreats. So, Dorothy, let's go on talking about balance a bit. Listeners, just before the break, if you weren't with us, we were talking about pairs of opposites and this lovely, beautiful space, rich space of potential in between them. And it made me think of left brain, right brain. We hear that all the time. And just heard a wonderful presentation on a book called The Master and His Emissary, which is actually about left brain and right brain. Studies. They're finding so much out about left brain and right brain, but I have a tendency toward being very right brained. So the left brain, I learned, is a totally closed system. So the left brain takes data that is intact, that is within the brain, and uses that data to create new storylines and sort of further its learning. It's sort of like a very manual process of bringing data into the brain. It's always open to new, but it's a very systematic process of putting new data in the brain and then banking on and using that data. And the right brain, on the other hand, is totally nonverbal. It opens to people and nature, to the body and the world and spirit. It sort of works by creativity and by movement, and it's sort of circuitous in a way and more intuitive. So it's a process of those being blended together. We often hear that of somebody being left-brained and right-brained. And Dorothy, I find, that the two of us have a tendency to be, you've taught me the joy of bullet points. when sort of put our notes for the shows back and forth. I often will draw pictures and images and arrows and lines. And if instead of a bullet with a bold, mine has underlines and stars. And I've come to really appreciate bullet points and linear thought. But yet you are highly intuitive. I know often I will put down a quote or a sentence, and I can sense that you draw so many other sources and other connections to that statement. So, I sense that you've done quite a breadth of work of bringing balance between the two, and I am joyfully on that same path. So, it's always about integrating the two sides and finding that sweet space in between. I find that really then life becomes clear and enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And I think another area, if we want to be looking at this whole issue of balancing multiple perspectives, is the balance of the heart and the mind, which is a big theme in spiritual development.
Indeed. And we have to, so many of us think of the heart in two ways. We think of the heart as love. And sometimes we mistake that, I would say, for personal love, like, somebody who's very important to us, somebody who we love dearly. And that is an aspect of the heart for sure. But I think, you have certainly brought so much to the table in talking about the heart in terms of interconnectedness and interdependence. We've had many shows where we've discussed that as really the vibration of the heart, that it's expansive in that way, and it's about universal love and group love.
It is the sea of possibilities for what we can create together.
Nice. And the mind, we often just think of the mind as this data processor, but really the mind is our access to our higher self, and I would say our spiritual self, and to intuition and creativity. And I love, Patanjali calls it the rain cloud of knowable things. So it's sort of all these thought forms that exist, that we have access to, that really go beyond the data that our mind has stored in it and gives us access. So I find that connection of heart-mind is, as you said in the quote, it's that limitless and boundless nature, and the mind gives us a doorway with access to that. So the blending of those two energies really open us up to tremendous potential.
I would agree. And for listeners that are not aware of it, there's a Global Coherence Initiative, which is a science-based co-creative project to unite people in a heart-focused care and intention, which is really a way of linking heart and mind. And I think, Steve, you were just at a conference recently where you heard some really interesting findings.
Oh,
am I right?
You're so right. This was a conference dedicated to esoteric healing, which is a form of energy healing. And so much of the conference was dedicated to science and how is science merging with spirituality, and how is this concept of our physical heart and that which we can prove about our heart really related to our mind, to our relationships with each other, to our interdependence, to creativity, to co-creating. I mean, there are just so many studies, so many people presented on this research that is showing that the heart leads to the brain, and that our heart cells have memory, that our heart cells store information, that the heart is actually formed well before the brain as a fetus. So, it starts its pulse on its first day of sort of coming into manifestation, and that continues until its last. Our brain waves can stop and we can still survive, but once the heart's done, it's done. And all this research that says, that the EKG waves of a fetus literally can be picked up in the mother's EEG, that they are in constant communication with each other. And there's just incredible relationship between between the heart and the brain, and the ways that the electromagnetic field that is produced by the heart influences the brain. I didn't know before this conference that the heart generates this tremendous biomagnetic field, 500 to 5,000 times bigger than the brain's field. And it travels at the speed of light. So it's, in 1 second, the vibration of your heartbeat has traveled 186,000 miles per hour, right? The speed of light. And just all of these fascinating studies that show how the heart's field actually gets amplified by the brain. That when we come into contact with someone, and if we connect heart to heart, in other words, we all hear the word namaste, I see the light in you, which is this connection, this sort of union of our sameness. It alights the heart, and then the brain actually turns up the dial on that resonance. And all of this just really incredible work by HeartMath Institute. Listeners, if you're really interested in this, there's so much work by HeartMath Institute and a scientist by the name of Gary Schwartz, but just really incredible, double-blind studies where they really are coming to see the ways when we connect heart to heart, we actually influence the brain, and then the brain activity actually influences our well-being. The brain, the blood-brain barrier, and the pineal gland, Dorothy, I could go on and on, but I won't. The pineal gland, which is this little gland in the brain, which they say is the window to the soul, that this is the meeting point of that spark of the divine. More blood goes through the pineal gland than any other gland in the body per volume, which is amazing, which says, that's how the heart creates electromagnetic. It's the motion of the blood through the vessels. So you can imagine this field that the heart's creating by moving all this blood through the pineal gland. So indeed, they are related not only physiologically, but in ways that connect us to each other, that then tells us we are connected to the greater source. And it's just making a fact of the one life and our interconnections to it. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, Steve. So what do you see as the implications for us in terms of developing balance?
Well, I think it comes to our understanding of our relationship to the other. Because balance is really between 2 points, right? And as we tap into the heart, and we realize we have a connection to one another, and we come to understand and value the connection and the equality, the fact that I am you, you are me, our connection and relation is a really beautiful balance. And creating that balance, creating harmony within that balance should be really so important to us. That should be really one of our goals, is that inter-heart connection and allowing it to bring balance to ourselves, to our state of homeostasis. The heart has so much to do with our immune system and balance within our body, that we really can balance so much by really focusing on the importance of our connection to one another. How's that sound?
You know what? Well, what I think about, Steve, is it a matter of creation, or is it a matter of remembering?
Beautiful, yes.
What is our base state? It seems to me our base state is we are part of the one life. We are already connected to each other, and then we do things to break that connection. But so maybe it's not that we have to create the connection, we have to remember it or reconstitute it.
correct? Like recreate it where it may be, and build on that through co-creation once we come to that, yes, this is it, right? Dorothy, got to go to a break. Listeners, we'll be back right after these messages.
Tune in to Lucid Planet Radio with Dr. Kelly Neff. This hit show will illuminate your senses and empower you beyond your daily stressors and hardships. Renowned psychologist and author Dr. Kelly will captivate you with far-reaching topics and amazing guests as you wake to the greatest version of yourself. Learn to tap into your intuitions, think critically about our world, heal emotional and psychological wounds, and follow your passions to live your dreams. The Lucid Planet. Welcome home. Visit lucidplanetradio.com for more information.
Amber Teal, founder of The Healthy Edge, is bringing you the hit show Healthy Edge Radio, living with power, passion, and purpose. Amber provides the support and tools necessary for you to finally release the weight and emotions that are hidden beneath the weight. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information on how you can take the next step with Amber, visit getthehealthyedge.com.
Hi, this is Laura Richer, host of On the Verge Radio. Sometimes you hear encouraging messages like transform your life now, become empowered, create the life you crave, and it all seems overwhelming and you're not sure where to start. I'm here to tell you that self-improvement is not always fun and easy, but it is always worth it. The path to creating positive changes begins with releasing the things that have been holding you back. Then you can create a life that inspires you. I know this because I've done it. You can find out more about what I do by visiting my website, seattlehealinghypnosis.com. I look forward to supporting you on your journey.
Gifted intuitive healer and spiritual teacher Sarah Luce brings her unique style to the hit show Small Steps, Big Breakthrough Radio on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in each month as Sarah turns reality on end and shows us how to experience expansive results with simple yet powerful steps. Expect an enlightening bend on what you currently believe is possible. For show details and upcoming topics, visit sarahluce.com. That's SARALOOS.com.
Tune in each month to Synergenetic Living Radio, where Rick and Grace Paris discuss the synergenetic way of life. What it means to truly change your perspective in life. What it means to take control of your life and manifest your true desires. For more information on Rick and Grace Paris and Synergenetic Living, check out synergeneticliving.com. Get clear on the life you desire and the current life you are creating and what is between the two. Synergenetic Living, living life loud.
Thrive is what we experience when our mind, body, and soul operate as one. When we thrive, we excel on all levels. Thrive is the mindset that matters. It is essential to our being. Have you ever found yourself looking for the instruction manual on how to thrive? You'll find everything you need to help you feel strong, powerful, and peaceful in your own body. So don't waste any more time. Visit thrivebyjen.com today.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. We are continuing our discussion on balance. And just before the break, we were talking about ways in which we forget that balance is a natural quality between human beings, that really we are an equal, and we've got an equal part of the one life. We are all aspects. We are all sort of facets, I would say, of the diamond that is the light of the one light. And we forget that. We lose touch with that. We sort of come out of balance because of the world around us, and we've certainly seen so much of that, Dorothy. Right? In the world at large. We spoke at the beginning about moral equivalencies. I'm wondering if you'd like to say a bit more about that.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think the whole issue of fairness and the weighing of options is a critical aspect for us to look at, because I'd just like to give a quote from Esoteric Astrology that balance requires the development of a sense of values and the power to use rightly the balancing analytical faculty of the mind. So we know that that each perspective, that different perspectives exist, and we know the importance of respecting where people have come from in the development of that perspective, which is not the same as agreeing with or respecting the particular position that they have arrived at. And so drawing moral equivalencies has to be done extremely carefully. When you are coming from a position of hate, of denigration, of hostility, of wanting to eliminate another position, that does not have a moral equivalence with being respectful, being inclusive in terms of what's going on. And I think part of the issue is, I'd just like to take us back a couple of shows, Steve, to the fact that we can respect a person as part of the one life. We can recognize and respect that they are part of the one life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we agree with or respect particular positions that they hold. And so we had a discussion, for example, about the fact that a person is not a white supremacist. A person is may hold those views, and those views may be counter the common good. So one of the ways that I think about this is, when we think about fairness and balance, is what is the ultimate goal that we are called to work towards? And however you want to name it, that is right human relations. Relating with everyone in a way that is respectful, mutually respectful. And that the common good is what we want to embrace. So when someone acts or holds a view that is destructive of the common good, that tears down the dignity and respect for particular individuals, that is not on the same moral plane.
Right.
Am I being clear on what
Yes.
I'm trying to express?
You're being totally clear. And what I'm also hearing is respect coming to the forefront, and that pushing against and quick reaction, that it can often not allow someone to express their views. And I think we saw that in Charlottesville, and I have a sense that it's what is really happening worldwide, that it becomes a matter of giving someone the space to not only express their views, but to allow those views to be out in the open for the public to see, to respond to reasonably, to find the truth within that, and perhaps through respect allow that person to see ways in which their own truth may be distorted. There was a moment in Charlottesville where I feel that was such an important moment for our country, and for really right action and for clarity, in that there was a moment when people were saying, and I believe our president was saying, listen, these are good people, and they are marching, in response to statues coming down. And we could talk about that sentence forever, about the statues, about the marches and these good people. But what happened was, at some point there was enough space given where somebody said, if you were marching with somebody who was obviously had an agenda different than what this march was for, and they were saying these hateful, separative, critical, mean, and almost violent, if that was the energy they brought and that they were expressing, a good person would say, this is not for me. and I would need to remove myself from that group of people. And I saw clarity come to that situation because there was time and space, and the whole country was sort of creating a dialogue on this. And so it really comes down to, can we allow others to have their opinions, but also can we create an environment where we can respond to those and give them the time and space to hear it, so we may come to some common sort of, truth or resolution, or at least the facts, especially with these moral equivalencies, where if you really take the time and look into it, you see that they're not equivalent at all. They're actually not balanced because there's not truth involved. They actually get tipped and are manipulated. So does that make sense as building upon what you were saying?
Well, yeah, I think I'd like to just take it one step further, because there's been a lot of discussion of the First Amendment and what free speech means. And it's interesting to me that the courts have ruled that hate speech is not covered by the First Amendment. Right. In other words, I may have the right to voice an opinion that is different than yours, but I cannot cross the line into hate speech and expect my right to speak out to be protected. And I think that I'd like to relate that back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations, which virtually all nations have signed on to. And in there, at the very beginning, it talks about the inherent dignity and respect due to every human being. So when we speak in a way that denigrates others and strips them of that dignity, treats them as though they are somehow contemptible and deserving of violence, of being exterminated, that is not acceptable.
And it goes back to our shows on right speech and on energy following thought, and that words actually are forms. They carry and hold a force, and that force can actually damage an individual. So there we go again, even getting closer, to this idea of the impact of energy, and really understanding how our thoughts, our separative thoughts, really have an impact, and how wonderful that the courts would recognize this, that hate speech is actually not protected because it causes implicit harm. And it's a huge step forward, and wonderful that we bring up the courts, because Dorothy, right, are they not? We think of the symbol of the courts as the scale.
That's right.
And it brings about balance. It's this idea of really getting to the truth, of being the observer, of non-reaction leading to reasonable response, and then taking action, which means clarifying laws, creating new laws. So really it is about that, the observer. It is about balance and perspective, and is not law multiple perspectives, right? Considering all of these perspectives, but then coming to a conclusion based on truth and fact. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Dorothy, it looks like we're just about at another break, and it will give us a bit of time to talk about, once again, a group and the ways that we sort of, I'd love to spend a bit of time talking about this idea of balancing ourselves. How do we evolve ourselves personally, but always still keep focus and maintain this, contribution and awareness of the group, and that beautiful balance of the way that we are individual, yet all of these individuals create the group and humanity as a whole, and we're responsible for both equally and simultaneously. So I hope that we can go into that a bit just after this break.
Awareness is universal. Establishing a living awareness through meditation brings peaceful, healthy, and creative well-being into your everyday life. The practice of living awareness, Spirit Fire's own meditation practice, is built on this belief and is designed for every level of practitioner. Each year, Spirit Fire hosts living awareness meditation retreats that allow you to explore the practice in depth at our retreat center in beautiful Western Massachusetts. Introduce yourself to meditation and the practice at the Foundation's retreat. Attend, in silence, a silent meditation retreat focused on mindfulness, presence, and nature, or be engaged with the meditation sittings themselves at the Deepening Retreat. Start adding to your awareness and attend a meditation retreat designed to cultivate consciousness in your everyday life. For details on attending a Living Awareness meditation retreat, visit upcoming events at www.spiritfire.com.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Do you know how to achieve wellness in all areas of your life? Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. Signs of wellness are a capacity to love and ability to nurture, a sense of purpose, a good sense of humor and plenty of fun in your life, a concern for others and a respect for the environment, a conscious commitment to personal excellence, a sense of balance and integrated lifestyle, and capacity to cope with whatever life presents. Well people enjoy their lives and want them to last as long as possible. That's why the wellness mindset usually accompanies other constructive, healthy lifestyle habits. By adopting a wellness mindset and behaviors like eating well, taking the right nutrition for the body, exercising, and saying affirmations are just a few things to structure a healthy system of values and beliefs. I will be your wellness coach to help you achieve a wellness lifestyle. Call us at 888-777-4232. That's 888-777-4232. And visit us at MaryJaneMack.com.
Tune in to the Psychic Professors Show, The Voices of Spirit Radio, with international medium and spirit artist Dr. Susan Barnes on Transformation Talk Radio, featuring a variety of spiritual topics such as psychic art, spiritualism, EVP, psychic development, and mediumship. This hit call-in show provides listeners with breakthrough wisdom to enliven and enlighten their lives. Visit spiritartgallery.net.
Tune in each Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome back, listeners. Dorothy and I were discussing balance. We have been discussing that for the whole month of October. And just before the break, I talked a bit about this balance of self and group. And as we mentioned earlier, I was just at a wonderful conference on energy healing for 10 straight days, talking about the ways in which we balance our energetic self and ways in which we contribute to the energetic group. And for those of you who perhaps know a bit about the chakras, it's an interesting dynamic and an interesting structure because it is really that balancing of and integrating of the individual with the self. So Dorothy, do you mind if I just a minute talk about the chakras and the way they balance?
Oh, go for it.
Cool. It's one of my favorite subjects. So the diaphragm, right? We've got this diaphragm within our bodies that actually separates our energy centers above and below. And below is where we work on our personal self, our individuality. And above the diaphragm tends to be our spiritual work and our work towards group. So the basic center, which is all about our will to be here and our sort of our survival instinct, but also that presence, that actual physical presence of my beingness, balances the basic center, balances with the crown center on top. So all of these along the spine, we've got 6 centers up our spine, and it balances our physical being with our spiritual being. We've all heard of our crown center talking about our spiritual self, our access to the divine. So those two are on either end. And then if you come in one, just above the basic center is the sacral center. And that's our center for creativity, physical creativity. The reproductive system is there. And we can all imagine how that is about procreativity, but also manifesting and bringing things into the world. And that sacral center balances above, which is one below the crown, which is the throat center. We're going to leave the ajna center out because it's not along the spine, but the throat center is our mental creativity. So that's our abstract ideas, that's intuition and creativity. So it's balancing our mental creativity and access to those rain cloud of knowable things, and then bringing that into the manifest world. And then the center two are the solar plexus, which is our personal love and personal power, who we are as individuals, what makes us happy personally, with our heart center. And we've been talking a lot about the heart, which is universal love, group love, unconditional love, which is the center for joy. So happiness in conjunction with joy. And so all of those centers up the spine, if we include the crown as being aligned with the spine, they're in twos that are balancing our personal self with our spiritual or group self. And then the ajna is like the conductor of the orchestra, which is sort of keeping those all in relation in a cooperative way. So I just find it interesting that within us we've got this energy mechanism that is constantly keeping us in tune with what we receive and express as an individual, but also what we receive and express as a group. I think it's pretty cool.
Thank you, Steve. That's a beautiful way of describing it and relating it to the individual and the group. I really like the way you've laid that out.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Yeah. Well, I think another interesting quote or mantra that reflects this whole issue of balance within the group is the one used by AA and other groups, that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what we're talking about when we're talking about balance, and particularly balance in how we relate within the human community, is that wisdom to know the difference, right?
Beautiful. Yes, that's the serenity prayer. And
yes.
Beautiful, this idea of, I find it even relates to others in a way. You know, it's that idea of the things that are out of my sort of capacity to change, the things I can change, knowing the difference. But what I feel there is group. Like, how do we distribute power? How can we also rely on others? Certainly, that is relying on God or the divine. And we know that has become, the Serenity Prayer is actually, it's become in a sense a mantra of sorts for people who are in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is this idea of where does my personal power lie, and how do I exercise that and find that, know what I can tackle and can't tackle, and find that wisdom that's inherent between them both. Yes, beautiful to bring that in, Dorothy.
Well, the one of the points I'd like to make, though, is that a mantra like that assumes that we all have, within the societal framework, an equal ability to participate in the group, an equal ability to voice what's going on. And we know that that's not the case. And we've recently had a lot of attention on power imbalances, particularly gender-based power imbalances, and what happens for the less powerful, in these cases women, when the more powerful controls what they're able to do in their life and is able to exercise very negative consequences if they do not go along with whatever the more powerful person wants. And I just wanted to note that there are methods by which many of us are trying to unlearn that imbalance and to balance things out. For example, in groups, there's the concept of the talking stick. So you can only talk when you have the talking stick and it gets passed around, and that keeps some people from dominating what is going on in the group. And I'm sure that there are other examples, but that's just one that came to my mind.
Well, and sort of it brings a serenity, right? Because I can't change that. I don't have the stick, right?
That's right.
I know that's a stretch, but that whole the serenity prayer of this idea of wisdom in knowing when I can affect change, and the wisdom stick being that, okay, here it is, now it's my turn and I will contribute, and in a way of knowing when to step back and when to move forward. So I like that correlation. Interestingly enough, Dorothy, one of my best friends used to own, just until this summer, the cottage where the serenity prayer was written. So I have spent so much time in this gorgeous cottage where that prayer was written, which is in Western Massachusetts. She just sold it this summer. We had a beautiful reading of the Serenity Prayer and a beautiful meditation on it before she left, and it's in good hands now. But beautiful prayer. And I personally also love that idea of the talking stick and what that represents, and as it is related to the Serenity Prayer, because I often have a tendency in my fiery ways to push against the things that if I can't change it, well, I'm going to try anyway. And it creates an imbalance. And it is really, wisdom when all right, this is not for me right now. And the time will come when I will be presented with something I can change. And will I find the courage? Nice.
That's right. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about that much, but that I think is important, is that whole stability of group energy, which allows the group to move forward in a creative way. And that one of the ways that we can contribute to that stability is to make sure that that all of the members of the group are respected, and their perspectives, where they can contribute positively, are listened to carefully, even if people don't agree, because it can be really easy, without intending to kind of gang up, and everybody rushes to one position. And if you think of that, in terms of like a balance board, you got everybody rushing to one end. Well, what's going to happen? It's going to fall apart. You're going to stumble. We need the balance of within the group of the different perspectives. And we talk about this energetically in different ways, like the different rays. We talk about it from an astrological perspective. There are many ways, but I think it's important to remember that the balance that we contribute is not that we agree with everybody and we come to this single point where everything else is considered irrelevant, but rather that we have the complexity, the richness of the tapestry of many different types of energetic contribution.
Beautiful.
That's where we find the balance.
And the stability, the tapestry of the diversity of our earth is incredible, and offers us so much. Dorothy, we're at the end of the show. We've got to wrap it up pretty quick. That was a beautiful way to end it. I thank you so much. Much wisdom there in your words, and very thankful for that. So, Dorothy, next week we're going to talk about stability, balance as stability. So, listeners, I hope you will join us and we can continue this conversation. Dorothy, it's been a delight. As always, it's been going so fast lately. It's been great, Dorothy. So we're going to say goodbye. I'll see you next week, right, Dorothy?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, listeners.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.